A lot to unpack in this week's episode, so let's get started. Episode 10 of NCIS Origins is entitled Blue Bayou, named after the song Blue Bayou by Linda Ronstadt. This song is essentially about the dream that is Blue Bayou. Linda is envisioning a dream on Blue Bayou with her baby and her friends. She wants to return to happier times. A pretty good description of how Gibbs felt for the majority of this episode. Most of the episode was a flashback. I thought it was ironic that we were watching a flashback episode in a prequel show to another show. There was no crime committed and no crime to be solved in this episode. It was 100% character focused and gave some good background to Gibbs' healing journey. The episode begins where we left off in the last episode, which was just a fantastic ending to episode 9. Lala can't look at Gibbs, but is being professional. It takes her about 10 days to come around and say that she's asking off Frank's team. I love the tension and the whole scene where Gibbs is like, no, and she's like, you're gonna tell me what to do? I go back and forth on whether or not I like the narration all of the time. The actors and the stories are so good that I'm like right there with them. And then Mark Harmon's voice comes in and I'm like, oh wait, I'm not there. It's sort of jarring and takes me out of the story. I do understand that NCIS Origins is being told from Gibbs' point of view, so I understand why it's being narrated by him, but it feels like the story and environment can only go so deep because Mark Harmon's voice will always come in and just exposition dump some info and then we move on. There's slightly too much narration for how Lala reacts or things that Lala says. I would like to just see her work through stuff rather than just Mark Harmon telling us what she told his past self. I would have loved to have seen the 10 days that Lala doesn't look at Gibbs, have it feel long and monotonous. While we're on the subject, let's skip to the end for just a second. I would have loved to hear Lala's response, like in her own words. It's not like we're locked into only having scenes with Gibbs because it's from Gibbs' point of view or anything like that. We have entire episodes dedicated to not Gibbs' character. I personally want to see more of Lala and more of Mariel Molino's acting. Just leave the camera on her and let her act. Let her say what she's thinking rather than hear it from Mark Harmon via narration. I loved everything about Gibbs and Ruth's relationship. I love the progression throughout the episode. Love at the end how she was like, he's my best friend. Like, they just have the sweetest and like what would normally be considered kind of an odd relationship, but a really strong relationship nonetheless. I love so much at the end that she's wearing the hat. I love that she just got to the point where she was encouraging him and was just genuinely proud of him. The mentor role that she took on for Gibbs in this in-between time before Frank's really stepped into that role was great to see. This scene was fantastic. I love the interaction here. Franks and Ruth are sort of the same person. They both appear a little abrasive at first, but once you get to know them, you know that they have a good heart. And in this case, they both want what's best for Gibbs. I like that Franks had just as much of an epiphany moment as Gibbs ever did. And it was great that it was Ruth's push to get him to hire Gibbs. That was an interesting balance. We know that Franks cares about Gibbs. I just think he needed Ruth to help him with how he could be a help to Gibbs. Franks is figuring it out just as much as Gibbs is. There were actually a lot of lines that made me laugh in this episode.
Wanna talk?
Too bright to be bagging my beer.
And you leave him standing there alone in his apron.
This episode definitely made me tear up and feel emotions for a character that we had barely any interaction with in previous episodes, and most of the interactions were not like the most positive. I really enjoyed the writing of this episode and how the writers were able to get us, the audience, to really care about a character in 40 minutes. I think that's because they're building off of our pre-existing care for Gibbs, so to see another character care for Gibbs makes us like them even more. The cinematography in this episode did not disappoint once again. I love the bokeh effect behind the two actors in the shot. I love the wide angle of them on the truck, and then this shot, and this was an awesome opening shot. The red lighting really gives opportunity for a good lighting situation. I thought this was a fantastic episode. Maybe not the episode I would reach for in terms of rewatchability, but still a very strong episode. And I think having no crime involved in a crime-based TV show, and it still being very entertaining and good quality television, is just a testament to the great writing of the characters throughout the season so far and the acting. Now that we've chatted about the quality of the episode, let's talk details. Gibbs and Lala. Last week, I was so certain Gibbs and Lala weren't getting together. I was so confident. Seems like I was wrong. I'm glad that we got the interaction between them at the beginning of the episode, and we know that she cared about him already, so it makes sense that she would come back and check on him. I think the timing of all of it was good. I'm not complaining about what happened, and I'm glad she doesn't 100% automatically trust Gibbs again, or so we're told by Mark Harmon. But for as large of a role that Lala plays in this series so far, the little amount of time that we get to see her process things was slightly frustrating for me. I understand we have a runtime that we must adhere to. Everything in this episode needed to happen. There was nowhere when I was like, this should not be in the episode. Everything was necessary. But we get so little time of seeing Lala actually processing, even if her processing happened over a longer period of time, which feels more realistic. Hopefully we can unpack Lala's reaction more in later episodes. Gibbs definitely cares about Lala as well. I like that he acknowledges that she's not even his to lose, kind of acknowledging the tension of their relationship or just the state of their relationship at this point. Definitely enough time has passed that I'm okay with them getting together. With this being said, something bad happens, right? Like, Gibbs has never talked about Lala before. This is a story he doesn't tell. I think the moment she doesn't ask off Frank's team is the moment that her fate is sealed. This whole time I thought Randy was gonna die. I think Lala is gonna die. It feels like the show is willing to take those kinds of risks. I don't know though, if they choose to continue the show after if Lala dies, I don't know how invested I'll be, but I will respect the story decision to kill Lala as long as it's earned. That's bold writing that I feel like a lot of shows aren't taking these days. Regardless of any of that, I hope there are still some consequences to what happened in episode 9 and Lala isn't immediately back to trusting Gibbs. How will Lala die? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Lala is going to get killed by the second sniper that is working with Bugs. Who is the second sniper, you ask? Well, it is in fact Cliff Wheeler. Obviously, I don't know for certain if that is the case, but the second sniper is definitely someone close to the team or part of NIS somehow. Worth noting that Bugs probably doesn't know who it is either. Who shredded the paperwork that had this information? Also, I love that Gibbs has been solving puzzles the entire episode, so this moment here, where he finds a sentence on a shredded piece of paper among many other shredded pieces of paper, is still sort of believable, but whoever was shredding this paperwork didn't want anyone to know, which Vera is probably the one who wrote it, so if someone else is shredding her paperwork, she still knows the information. Also, sounds like Gail knows who was shredding the paperwork and broke the shredder, so Gail is definitely not gonna make it. Or Gail is the second sniper. Either way, there is definitely a second sniper, and someone from the series is not gonna make it. I love that Mary Jo doesn't bring this moment up again. Like, she clearly walked into something sort of tense, and she was like, no, we gotta set up a tree. We get more context for why Gibbs likes building boats and doing woodworking stuff, so that was cool. We also get more context for Gibbs and his father's relationship. We will see his father again at some point, especially because he has the rules that we know Gibbs gets back. At some point, Gibbs starts living by those rules again, whenever that happens. I thought for a second that the guy bagging Frank's groceries the second time was going to be a cameo by Mark Harmon.
Paper or plastic?
It sounded like him for a second, but it was an older guy, so the creators knew you would think that and used it to their advantage. I thought it was really cool at the end when you can almost see the shift in respect when Franks gives Gibbs the job. Like, almost immediately he saw Franks' authority. His attitude turned from irritated to respect.
Yes, sir.
I also definitely thought for a brief second that Gibbs was going to inherit the apartment building maintenance role, but that clearly was not true. Also, love that Gibbs and Ruth did puzzles together and didn't talk the entire time. That was just funny.
We never talk when we puzzle.
Wait, you want to talk?
Episode 10 was a fantastic episode. I loved the characters, getting to learn more about them. The cinematography was fantastic. Music was great. Loved getting even more backstory to Gibbs, as well as setting up what I'm assuming will be the season finale conflict. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and please let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Or if you have any other theories about what might happen in the rest of the series, I would love to hear them.